Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today we're plunging into a topic that honestly sounds like it's ripped straight from a high-tech thriller, but it's very much a present and pressing reality. Imagine a near future where all your digital secrets, your banking information, maybe your private emails, your personal health records, even, the most sensitive national security communications are suddenly and irrevocably vulnerable. And not because of some new clever hacker finding a loophole, but because of an entirely new kind of computer.
Yeah, that future isn't some distant fantasy. It's definitely a looming horizon. We're talking about quantum computers. These aren't just, faster versions of the machines we use today. They operate on fundamentally different principles of quantum mechanics. Things like superposition, entanglement, and their impending capability to solve certain mathematical problems will effectively, well, break our current public key cryptography, which is, let's be clear, the very bedrock of pretty much all global digital security. And this isn't theoretical future gazing or a problem for decades down the line. It's a coming reality that the world's brightest minds are actively addressing right now, working hard to secure our digital future before the threat fully materializes.
And that precisely is our mission in this deep dive today, to give you a clear, concise, and hopefully captivating shortcut to understanding the cutting edge of safeguarding that digital future. We're going to unpack a critical foundational piece of this vast, complex puzzle, the emerging field of what's known as quantum safe or post-quantum cryptography, PQC for short.
Right. And specifically, our focus today is on Saber. It's a leading candidate in this really rigorous standardization process being conducted by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST. We're not just looking at the algorithm itself, though. We're diving into a truly groundbreaking new piece of hardware, a dedicated accelerator designed to make Saber incredibly fast, astonishingly efficient, and genuinely ready for real-world deployment. We're talking everything from massive data centers right down to, your smart home devices.
Okay, so by the time we wrap up this deep dive, you, the listener, are going to walk away with, hopefully, a crystal clear understanding of this quantum threat. We'll look at how a specific and highly promising PQC solution like Saber actually works at its core. And maybe most interestingly, the ingenious engineering that's bringing it to life in physical silicon. We're aiming to unravel some complex ideas with surprising facts and plenty of those aha moments that make dense topics click into place. Think of it this way. We're exploring how visionary engineers are building the digital fortifications of tomorrow, today, making sure our online world remains secure no matter what computational power lies ahead. So let's really settle into this idea of the quantum shadow hanging over our current digital world. For decades, our entire global digital infrastructure, secure websites, online banking, encrypted emails, confidential government communications, all of it has relied on public key cryptography. When we talk about this, we're usually referring to algorithms like RSA or elliptic curve cryptography, often called ECC. These systems are incredibly robust against today's classical computers because they're built on mathematical problems that are just, astronomically difficult to solve. They essentially rely on the fact that for a classical computer, factoring truly massive numbers or solving discrete logarithm problems would take billions of years, longer than the age of the universe, right? It's a computational brick wall.
Yeah, that's right. A very, very high and thick brick wall. The security isn't based on simply keeping a secret key hidden, like in older symmetric crypto. It's based on the practical impossibility for even the most powerful supercomputers today to reverse engineer that key from public information in any reasonable time frame. But the game changes entirely with the advent of large-scale quantum computers. These aren't just faster traditional processors. They harness these mind-bending principles of quantum mechanics, like superposition and entanglement, to perform calculations in fundamentally different ways. For instance, Shor's algorithm, which is a famous quantum algorithm, can efficiently solve those very mathematical problems, integer factorization and discrete logarithms that RSA and ECC rely on for their security. It's not about chipping away at the brick wall. It's more like having a quantum-powered jackhammer that can bring the whole thing down in moments, not millennia.
Wow, that's a truly sobering thought. It means that once a sufficiently powerful quantum computer is built and scaled up, and many experts believe this is a matter of when, not if, perhaps within the next decade or two, it will completely render these existing cryptographic schemes insecure. And you're saying it's not just making them slightly weaker, making them take, say, a few days instead of billions of years to crack.
No, not slightly weaker. It's about outright breaking their fundamental security assurances. They become useless. Imagine the implications. Anything encrypted today, anything stored using current methods, your banking transactions, personal health data, classified government communications, the blueprints for critical infrastructure could theoretically be stored now, captured by an adversary, and then decrypted easily by a powerful quantum computer tomorrow. It's a complete and retrospective compromise of vast amounts of sensitive data. It means our digital past could be exposed, and our digital future would be built on, well, sand.
The scale of this problem is hard to grasp. Just think about what you rely on every day. Secure online purchases, your private messages, access to your cloud storage, medical records, digital signatures on legal documents. And then there's the bigger picture stuff, like the fundamental security protocols that underpin national defense systems and critical infrastructure, power grids, financial networks.
Exactly. All of it relies on the integrity of our current public key cryptography. If that foundation crumbles, it's not just a breach. It's a systemic vulnerability that touches pretty much every aspect of our digital lives. The potential for catastrophic data loss, identity theft on an unprecedented scale, and massive disruption to global commerce and governance is frankly immense. This isn't a threat that can just be ignored or pushed down the road for someone else to deal with. The time to act is definitely now.
Okay, so that urgency really galvanizes the global response, doesn't it? Given these immense stakes, I imagine it's not just individual researchers working in isolation somewhere. How is the international community coordinating this monumental shift? And what role specifically is an organization like NIST playing in sort of shepherding us into this quantum-safe era?
You're absolutely right. This isn't a problem any single entity can solve alone. Governments, academic institutions, industry leaders worldwide are taking this extremely seriously. Here in the U.S., the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, has really taken a global leadership role. They initiated this monumental multi-year standardization procedure. It is, in effect, a global competition to find and standardize what they call quantum-safe or post-quantum cryptographic schemes. This process is absolutely crucial because the chosen algorithms will form the new international standards for digital security, much like RSA and ECC are today.
So it's not just about finding an algorithm that works, but finding the best ones, the most robust, the most efficient, that everyone can agree on and implement globally for interoperability.
Precisely. The standardization process is incredibly rigorous. It involves multiple rounds of evaluation where cryptographers and researchers from all over the world submit their best ideas. NIST began this whole process back in 2016. They received over 80 submissions initially from various research teams globally. These represented a really diverse range of mathematical approaches. You have lattice-based crypto, code-based, hash-based, multivariate, polynomial-based, and a few others. Over the years, these candidates have undergone intense scrutiny, cryptanalysis, public review. Many have been broken or found to have significant weaknesses, while others have advanced. This multi-round process is designed to weed out the weaker candidates and refine the strongest ones. It ensures not just global interoperability, but also a baseline of robust security against future quantum threats, and importantly, against existing classical attacks, too.
And beyond the pure mathematical security, what other practical things does NIST look at when they're selecting these? Because, I mean, a mathematically sound algorithm isn't much use if it's too slow or too power-hungry for everyday devices, right?
That's a critical point, and it highlights the deep interplay between cryptographic theory and, well, practical application. It's definitely not just about the math. Implementation details are paramount. For instance, energy efficiency is a very important criterion in this selection process. These new quantum-safe algorithms, they're often more computationally intensive than their classical predecessors. They might require more processing power, more time, and therefore more energy. If we just swapped out RSA for a PQC algorithm without careful optimization, many devices from tiny IoT sensors and embedded systems to smartphones, laptops, even large data centers would just suffer. You'd see unacceptable performance bottlenecks, increased battery drain, higher operational costs. So NIST needs schemes that are not only secure but also practical for a really wide range of computing environments.
And Saber, our focus today, where does it stand in this intense global competition? How's it doing?
Saber has distinguished itself significantly. It's a round 3 finalist candidate in the Key Encapsulation Mechanism, or KEM, category. KEMs are vital. They're used for establishing shared secret keys between two parties over an insecure channel that's a fundamental building block for almost all secure communication. Its position as a round 3 finalist means it has withstood years of intense cryptographic attack and academic review. It's shown remarkable resilience and efficiency. It's truly at the forefront of this quantum-safe cryptography race.
Okay, so we've established the immense challenge posed by quantum computers and this monumental effort underway to find robust solutions. But if the old mathematical fortresses, like RSA and ECC, are crumbling, what kind of entirely new foundations are cryptographers building? What's the new paradigm? Here's where we dive into the core of Saber's security, which hinges on a fascinating concept called the learning with rounding, or LWR, problem. It sounds a bit technical, maybe, but the core idea is actually elegantly simple and incredibly clever.
It truly is elegant. The LWR problem is basically a mathematical problem that is considered hard to solve even in the presence of large quantum computers. That's the key phrase. Unlike problems like factoring, which Shor's algorithm can efficiently crack, there's no known quantum algorithm that can solve LWR efficiently, at least not yet, and people have looked hard. The real aha moment here and what makes it quantum safe is that the security comes not from large prime numbers or discrete logarithms, but from noise generated from rounding.
Noise from rounding. Okay, unpack that for us. My first thought is, isn't rounding something we usually try to avoid in precise calculations? Isn't it about losing information?
Precisely. And that's the clever twist. The loss of information is the security feature. Imagine you have a very precise number, say 3.14159265. Now you round it to the nearest whole number, which would be 3. That rounding operation introduces a tiny bit of noise or fuzziness by discarding the fractional part, right? Now, if an adversary only knows the rounded number, 3, and tries to work backward to find the original precise number, it becomes incredibly difficult. Many different precise numbers, like, say, 3.01, 3.49, maybe even 2.8 would all round to 3. This loss of information, this deliberately introduced fuzziness or noise, is what makes the underlying secret almost impossible to deduce.
Ah, okay. It's like trying to perfectly reconstruct an exact image when all you have are pixelated, slightly blurry versions. There's simply too much ambiguity introduced by the rounding.
That's a perfect analogy, exactly. The rounding isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's a fundamental part of the security mechanism. It's information intentionally obfuscated. It creates a sort of one-way mathematical function where going backward is computationally intractable, even for a quantum computer. Now, let's look at a simplified version of how this plays out in the Saber key encapsulation mechanism, the KEEM. Imagine Alice wants to send a secret key to Bob securely. First, Alice generates a secret value. Let's call it secret. It's actually a vector, a list of numbers. She also generates a public value derived from handfichtings, but critically, it has that rounding noise introduced into it. She then sends this noisy public value over to Bob. Bob receives this noisy public value, and using his own secret information, another vector of numbers, he performs a calculation that also involves some rounding. And remarkably, even though Alice and Bob use slightly different secret values and introduce rounding at different points in their calculations, they can both arrive at the exact same shared secret key.
Okay, that's clever. But what about an adversary? Someone listening in on that communication. What do they see and why can't they figure out the key?
Right. So an adversary, let's call her Eve, might intercept all the public data exchanged between Alice and Bob. She gets the noisy public values. However, due to the inherent mathematical properties of this learning with rounding problem, Alice's original secret S is incredibly hard to guess based on publicly available data. Quote, quote. The noise introduced by the rounding, combined with the complex mathematical structure of the underlying lattice, makes it computationally infeasible for Eve to reverse engineer Alice's secret S and thus reconstruct the shared key. And this holds true even if Eve possesses significant quantum computational power. This mathematical hardness, rooted in the clever use of noise and rounding, is the bedrock of Saber's quantum-safe security. It's a really ingenious way to turn what looks like mathematical imprecision into a powerful cryptographic defense.
So, the theory behind Saber and the LWR problem is brilliant, really a testament to cryptographic ingenuity. But theory often crashes into the hard wall of practical implementation, doesn't it? How do we take something this mathematically intensive and make it fast enough, small enough, and power efficient enough for the real world? This is where the paper we're diving into today reveals a truly significant milestone: the first silicon-verified ASIC implementation for Saber.
Yes, that phrase, first silicon-verified ASIC implementation, is critically important. It means this isn't just, a theoretical design on paper or a software simulation running on a generic processor, which is often where new cryptographic schemes start their life. This is a real physical chip, an application-specific integrated circuit, or ASIC, that has been fabricated in silicon, tested in the lab, and proven to actually work as designed. This is a huge leap forward. It takes Saber from being a strong academic candidate to a tangible, viable, practical solution that's ready, or nearly ready, for widespread deployment of post-quantum cryptography. It's really moving from the whiteboard to the motherboard, so to speak.
And why is that hardware acceleration so vital for PQC? Can't we just continue to run these algorithms in software on our existing computers, maybe with some, software updates?
That's a critical question. And while you can run PQC algorithms and software, these new quantum-safe schemes, for all their mathematical robustness, tend to be significantly more computationally intensive than their classical counterparts like RSA or ECC. They often involve larger key sizes, more complex operations like polynomial arithmetic, things that just take more computational effort. If we tried to run them purely in software on standard processors, they simply wouldn't meet the stringent speed, latency, and crucially, the energy requirements for many modern applications. Imagine trying to secure every single transaction in a high-speed data center, or every message sent by a tiny battery-powered Internet of Things device, or even just your daily web browsing with TLS handshakes. Software alone running on a general-purpose CPU is usually just too slow and consumes way too much power for these critical, high-volume, or resource-constrained scenarios. Hardware acceleration is what allows these complex algorithms to perform at the speeds and efficiencies necessary for practical, everyday use, especially in environments where power and physical chip area are at an absolute premium. It's about enabling ubiquitous security without grinding everything to a halt.
Okay, let's peer under the hood of this accelerator then. It's designed to handle the three core functions of any key encapsulation mechanism. Key generation, where the crypto keys are created.
Right.
Encapsulation, where a temporary secret is securely wrapped using a public key.
Yep.
And decapsulation, where that wrapped secret is unwrapped using a private key to recover the original secret. So it's the full suite of operations needed for secure key exchange. It sounds like a well-structured machine, but where does the real engineering wizardry come into play? What are the clever bits?
The high-level architecture is indeed quite modular and logical. The paper describes it as having self-explanatory named blocks, things like a polynomial multiplier, a sampler, memory controls, etc. And these blocks are equivalent to other lattice-based schemes in function and support, each of the operations involved in lattice-based cryptography. This indicates a versatile, modular design. Parts of this accelerator could potentially be repurposed or adapted for other lattice-based PQC algorithms, which is actually a pretty smart move given that NIST is standardizing several different schemes, not just Saber. So while the overall structure is logical and follows established cryptographic design principles, the true genius, as you hinted, lies in specific innovations within these blocks that optimize performance and efficiency far beyond what you typically expect from just a straightforward implementation.
Okay, let's unpack this. Computationally, the most expensive and complex part of Saber, and indeed many other lattice-based schemes, is the multiplication of polynomials. Specifically, these big ones of length 256. This is where a lot of the heavy lifting happens, right? And where the most energy is typically consumed. It's like the engine room of the whole operation, but it's also where the engineers faced a significant hurdle, didn't they? Something specific to Saber.
They absolutely did. The traditional fastest method for this type of polynomial multiplication, especially in cryptography, is often the number theoretic transform, or NTT. NTT is basically a special form of the fast Fourier transform adapted for finite fields, and it's incredibly fast for certain types of polynomial multiplication. Many other PQC algorithms successfully leverage NTT for its impressive speed. However, here's the catch for Saber. Its specific mathematical parameters do not directly satisfy the conditions for applying NTT. This is a significant challenge because it forces engineers to find alternative methods that are just as fast for this absolutely critical operation. They couldn't just use the standard toolkit.
Interesting. For those who might be familiar with NTT from other contexts, could you elaborate just a bit on why Saber is an exception here? Why can't it just use NTT like some other PQC candidates?
Sure, happy to. So for those familiar with NTT, you know it typically thrives when you're working in polynomial rings with specific mathematical properties. Usually this involves a modulus that's a prime number of a certain form, or maybe a polynomial modulus like xn1. These properties allow for the efficient calculation of twiddle factors and the modular arithmetic that makes NTT so fast and powerful. Saber, however, made a different choice for its parameters. It leverages a polynomial modulus of by 256 plus 1. Now, this choice offers its own distinct security benefits and actually simplifies certain other aspects of the algorithm, but it doesn't directly align with the mathematical requirements needed for a straightforward, efficient NTT application. A standard NTT implementation just wouldn't work correctly, or it would be prohibitively complex and slow. So this forces engineers to look for equally efficient but non-NTT alternatives, and that's where methods like Toomcook and Karatsuba-based multiplications come in. Research has shown that these recursive multiplication algorithms can actually achieve speeds as fast as NTT multiplications for Saber-specific parameters if implemented carefully.
Okay, so engineers couldn't use their usual go-to method, the NTT, and had to find another way using Toomcook or Karatsuba. But the real innovation described here seems to be this striding Toomcook multiplication, specifically adapted for Saber. Why is this particular adaptation so crucial? What makes striding such a breakthrough for performance and efficiency?
Right, this striding technique is really the core innovation for the multiplier. The problem lies in how polynomial multiplication works and how the final result needs to be handled within Saber's specific mathematical structure. Remember, Saber uses that by 256 plus 1 polynomial ring. This means it needs the final result of its polynomial multiplications to be reduced modulo by 256 plus 1. Classical Toomcook multiplication, to achieve its speed, requires splitting the input polynomials into smaller pieces. The standard way of doing this often leads to larger intermediate results, which means higher temporary memory requirements during the calculation. Think of it like a chef trying to make a complex sauce. A classical Toomcook recipe might say, mix all your wet ingredients here, then all your dry ingredients there, leading to lots of intermediate bowls taking up counter space. The striding approach, however, fundamentally changes how the polynomial is split during the initial evaluation stage of the Toomcook algorithm. Instead of splitting a polynomial ax into contiguous blocks of coefficients like a0x having coefficients a0 to a63, a1x having a64 to a127, and so on, the striding approach splits it with a stride, maybe a stride of 4, so a0x might become a 0 plus a4x plus a8 by 2 plus a252 by 63, a1x would be a1 plus a5x plus, and so forth. You're picking coefficients that are spaced out. This subtle but profound change allows the resulting intermediate polynomials, the ones you calculate during the Toomcook process, to be stored already reduced by 64 plus 1. This directly addresses that memory bottleneck. It's like the chef now says, okay, let's group ingredients by whether they're solid or liquid, regardless of their order in the original recipe. This lets the chef use far fewer, but maybe slightly larger, mixing bowls.
So it's a clever mathematical rearrangement, a different way of chopping up the problem that yields a massive practical payoff in terms of hardware resources needed. Less memory, basically.
Absolutely. This architectural innovation of striding offers immense benefits. It reduces the memory requirement to half with respect to the most efficient software Toomcook implementation. And having the memory is a monumental improvement because memory access is often a significant bottleneck in cryptographic hardware. It impacts both speed and power consumption. Less memory means fewer transistors, less power needed to access data, and ultimately a physically smaller chip. By optimizing this multiplication block, which is, remember, the most power-hungry block in the entire accelerator, they have achieved some remarkable results. They report being 1.37x more power efficient, 1.75x lower in area, and requiring 4x less memory compared to other state-of-the-art PQC ASICs. And what's even more impressive, maybe, is that their point multiplication, a key sub-operation within Toomcook, is 1.58x more energy efficient than state-of-the-art NTT-based multiplier designs. This level of efficiency, especially beating NTT-based designs in energy for this core operation, really solidifies Saber's candidacy for the NIST competition. It proves its practical viability in hardware.
That's truly impressive, especially beating NTT on efficiency. So how did they take this somewhat abstract mathematical concept of striding Toomcook and actually build it into physical hardware? What does that architecture look like under the hood?
Right, translating the math into silicon. They implemented this by developing a specific vector multiplication module. This isn't just a fixed function block, it's micro-programmed. That means its operations can be dynamically controlled by a sequence of micro-instructions stored perhaps in a small ROM. This allows it to flexibly perform the different steps of the striding Toomcook algorithm efficiently using a single core polynomial signed multiplier. And this is actually the first hardware implementation of the striding version of Toomcook multiplication, which is a compact variant specially adapted for Saber's needs. They've also incorporated something called a lazy interpolation technique in the evaluation data path. This is another clever optimization trick. It basically helps to reduce latency, which in turn cuts down energy consumption and improves overall performance by deferring some of the more complex reconstruction calculations until they are absolutely necessary. Don't calculate it until you need it.
And to further boost performance, I see they've integrated a significant amount of parallelism into this design as well. Cryptography can often feel very sequential, step by step. So how do they parallelize something like polynomial multiplication effectively?
That's a key part of the performance story. They've employed 7 parallel point multipliers, each with its own local memory. This local memory isn't some distant RAM block. It's physically distributed static RAM, SRAM, right there on the chip, strategically placed next to each multiplier to minimize data movement delay and maximize speed. This parallelism massively improves the performance. They report a 7x latency improvement for the multiplication stage at the expense of negligible accelerator area. So a huge speed up for a very little cost in chip size. Each of these local memories is cleverly designed to handle the specific sizes of polynomial coefficients needed during the process. Two 64-coefficient polynomials, each coefficient being 16 bits wide, and one 64-coefficient polynomial with 8-bit coefficients. And these memories have dual-port reading capabilities, meaning the multipliers can grab 2 pieces of data simultaneously, further speeding things up.
7 parallel multipliers, okay. And are those multipliers themselves parallel?
Yes, exactly. The point multiplier unit itself is designed to be scalable. It can, quote, instantiate several multiply and accumulate MAC units within each of those 7 parallel blocks. This allows them to further parallelize the actual point value multiplication step within Tomb Cook. For instance, they found that using just 4 MA units per multiplier gives similar performance to other state-of-the-art implementations like those using NTT, while still providing improvement in power, area, and energy. This flexibility allows designers using this core to potentially tailor the implementation to specific performance targets versus power budgets, making it highly adaptable for various applications. It's like having a dedicated team of 7 mini-chefs, as you said, but each mini-chef also has 4 hands working simultaneously on their part of the recipe. Very efficient.
You mentioned memory efficiency earlier and how striding TuneCook helps have the requirements compared to software. But digging deeper, there's an even more granular, almost ingenious trick they pull at the memory management level, isn't there? It involves something called negacyclic convolution. What exactly does that mean for someone trying to squeeze every last bit of efficiency out of silicon? It sounds complex.
Yeah, this is another really brilliant piece of low-level engineering. It's a prime example of truly understanding the algorithm down to its mathematical core and then finding an incredibly efficient hardware mapping for it. Because of how striding Tomb Cook operates within Saber's by 256 plus 1 polynomial ring, the polynomial multiplication ultimately becomes equivalent to a mathematical operation called convolution, where the expanded result is negatively wrapped. This specific type of operation is known as negacyclic convolution. Now, implementing this efficiently in hardware without using complex conditional logic of this and do that, or large lookup tables, could be a real challenge.
Okay, so if I'm understanding this right, it's like a special kind of data wrapping that happens in the memory to keep the polynomial result within the right mathematical boundaries. But the negative part implies some clever trick to handle what would normally be an overflow or wraparound.
You've hit on a perfect analogy there. Think of it like a circular memory buffer, like data wrapping around from the end back to the beginning. But here, there's a twist. In negacyclic convolution, when a coefficient's index would normally cause it to wrap around to the beginning of the memory space, instead of simply reappearing unchanged, its sign is flipped, it becomes negative. Implementing that negative wrap in hardware is done with this ingenious trick. For the intermediate polynomials of link 64 they work with, they essentially perform the 2's complement operation every time a coefficient index would normally lie out of bounds. And the way they detect this out of bounds condition is super efficient. They use the 6th bit of the coefficient index, since 26 is 64. If that bit is set, it means the index is out of bounds, so they trigger the 2's complement negation operation. The lower bits of the index are simply used for the standard memory address within the 64 coefficient block.
Wow, that's a remarkably hardware-efficient way to implement a potentially complex mathematical operation. It sounds like using a single bit check to control negation, based directly on the memory address itself. That must save a lot of logic gates and time compared to explicit checks. It really speaks to a deep understanding of both the math and the digital logic possibilities. It's not just brute force computation, it's elegant design.
Precisely. This isn't just about throwing more transistors at the problem. It's about deeply understanding the algorithm's mathematical properties and then finding a way to map those properties onto silicon in the most elegant and resource-frugal way possible. That kind of brilliant low-level engineering directly translates into better performance, less latency, lower power consumption, and a smaller chip area, all critical metrics for practical deployment. It reduces latency, area, and power, which are really the holy trinity of hardware design.
Okay, so we had this incredibly optimized core engine for Saber's math. But all this cutting-edge cryptography and ingenious hardware isn't much use if it can't be easily integrated into the devices we actually use every day. From powerful servers down to the smallest, most resource-constrained IoT gadgets. This is a crucial practical consideration, right? It needs to be an accelerator that plays well with others in a larger system.
Absolutely, and the paper highlights this specifically. They state that this highly area, energy, and memory-efficient accelerator can be integrated with bigger stack system on chips or resource-constrained IoT devices readily using the high-speed serial interface. This emphasis on ease of integration is critical for real-world deployment. You don't want a brilliant accelerator that's impossible to actually connect and control. To facilitate this, they've designed an interactive instruction set-based architecture. This architecture cleverly reuses basic building blocks internally, which significantly reduces the area overhead, the extra space needed for control logic, and it ensures compatibility with various host processors that might be running within a larger socket. The accelerator features a 24-bit custom instruction set. This instruction tells the accelerator what to do. It supports 4-bit opcodes, operation codes, to handle 11 distinct Saber-related operations, like start keygen, load polynomial, multiply vectors. It also includes two 10-bit address offsets, which allows the host processor to tell the accelerator where to find or store data within its dedicated 8 KB of dual-port data memory. This custom instruction set allows a host processor to efficiently delegate the complex Saber operations to the accelerator with minimal communication overhead, making it feel almost like a specialized coprocessor or an extension of the CPU itself.
So it's not just a standalone crypto chip, but something designed quite thoughtfully to slot right into existing system architectures. Does it also include other necessary cryptographic components, like, say, a random number generator, which Saber surely needs?
Yes, good point. For instance, the binomial sampler, which is an essential component for generating the specific type of noisy random numbers required by Saber's algorithm for generating secrets and keys, is implemented using simple combinational logic. This design choice ensures a very low area impact, as it doesn't require complex state machines or large memory buffers like some other random number generation techniques might. It's yet another small detail, but it points to the design's overall focus on efficiency and suitability for integrated systems where every square micron of silicon area counts. They've really thought through the whole life cycle, from the core math right down to integration and supporting components.
Okay, so after all this brilliant engineering, these architectural innovations, the striding tomb cook, the negacyclic convolution tricks, what does it actually feel like when you put your foot on this accelerator? How fast are we really talking in terms of real-world performance? The paper mentions some pretty remarkable numbers, especially when you compare them to existing software solutions running on regular CPUs.
Yeah, the speed metrics are genuinely outstanding, truly setting a new benchmark for PQC hardware, especially for LWR-based schemes like Saber. The accelerator achieves, get this, 80x, 78x, and 66x improvement in clock cycle requirements for key generation, encapsulation, and decapsulation respectively when compared with respect to state-of-the-art software implementations. To put concrete numbers to that, running at a moderate clock speed, key generation can be completed in just 89 microseconds. Encapsulation takes 117 microseconds, and decapsulation takes 146 microseconds. That represents, on average, about an 80x improvement over the fastest software implementation running on a comparable general-purpose CPU. And what's particularly noteworthy, as we mentioned, is that no hardware implementation till date existed for a learning with rounding LWR-based PQC core like Saber before this work. So this is really a true pioneer. It's not just an iterative improvement, it's a foundational breakthrough for this class of algorithms.
That speed is astonishing. I mean, to put that in perspective for listeners, a microsecond is a millionth of a second. So these incredibly complex quantum-safe operations can now happen almost instantaneously, far, far quicker than the blink of an eye. That must open up possibilities for secure communications, even in the most demanding real-time environments where delays are unacceptable.
Exactly. Such rapid execution enables real-time, high-throughput, secure communications that simply wouldn't be feasible with software-only solutions on many platforms. Imagine a secure VPN connection establishing itself almost instantly, or the TLS handshakes needed for secure web browsing happening so fast you don't even notice the cryptographic overhead anymore. This speed is crucial for applications ranging from high-speed network traffic filtering and encryption, where latency is a critical factor, to constantly communicating IoT devices that need quick session setups, and secure cloud infrastructure where potentially thousands of keys need to be generated and exchanged every second. It helps make quantum-safe security practically invisible to the end user, which is ultimately the goal. Strong security shouldn't get in the way.
But speed isn't the only metric that matters, is it? Especially when we talk about the sprawling, often energy-conscious world of the Internet of Things. If you're designing a device that needs to run on a tiny battery for years, or maybe fits on something the size of a postage stamp, efficiency becomes paramount. Size, power consumption, memory footprint. How does this Saber accelerator perform on those critical fronts?
Right. Efficiency is where this design truly shines, making it a strong contender for ubiquitous deployment, not just in powerful servers, but potentially in every corner of our connected world. Let's break down those efficiency figures they reported. First, area. The accelerator boasts a total area of just 0.158 millimeters. Now, what's incredible about this number is that it's 1.75x smaller in area compared to other PQC accelerators implemented on a more advanced 40-nanometer process, despite this chip being fabricated on an older, larger 65-millimeter process node. This highlights a really significant engineering achievement. They managed to outperform chips built on a smaller, typically more efficient manufacturing process. They've essentially done more with less, architecturally speaking, which is always the gold standard in cutting-edge chip design. It's like building a supercar that's smaller and lighter than its competitors, even though it's built with slightly older materials.
That is impressive, beating a smaller process node on area. Okay, what about memory?
Second, memory. We touched on this, but the total on-chip memory requirement is reduced to approximately 10 KB. This is reported as being 4x lower than other state-of-the-art PQC cores. This is achieved using that carefully designed dual-port, low-power, low-leakage on-chip TSMC SRAM, which is optimized for efficiency and minimal power draw even when idle. This dramatic reduction in memory footprint is absolutely critical for resource-constrained devices like smart cards or tiny sensors, where every kilobyte of memory matters for cost and size. It enables these devices to be truly secure without breaking the bank on memory components.
4 times less memory, wow. And power consumption, the real killer for battery life.
Third, power. This is another standout result. The full core consumes only 334 microwatts. At a moderate 10 megahertz clock speed and low 0.7 V supply voltage while being fully operational. This represents 1.38x less power consumption among existing PQC cores they compared against. To give you a sense of scale, 334 microwatts is less power than a tiny LED indicator light you might find on a typical electronic device. For devices that might need to be battery powered for years or perhaps rely on harvested energy from ambient light or vibrations, this ultra-low power draw is absolutely essential for long-term autonomous operation.
Microwatts. That's incredibly low. And finally, energy, which combines speed and power.
And finally, energy, which is often the most important metric as it combines power and time speed. The chip consumes the lowest energy per operation at 40 megahertz and 0.7 V VDD compared to the field. Specifically, a full key generation consumes 444.1 microjoules, encapsulation uses 579.4 hundredweight, and decapsulation takes 724.5 Cyrenaics operating point. This unparalleled energy efficiency, especially recalling the 1.58x lesser energy consumption of the unit multiplication with respect to state-of-the-art NTT multiplication, is a direct testament to the brilliance of the striding Tomb-Cook method and those integrated memory and logic optimizations we discussed. Less energy per operation means longer battery life, plain or simple.
That's truly amazing. You can really picture it now. A tiny sensor buried in a remote field monitoring environmental conditions, or maybe a medical implant communicating securely with a doctor's reader, or perhaps a swarm of small drones needing robust real-time security for coordination, all while running on a minuscule amount of power and taking up barely any space. This accelerator genuinely makes that kind of embedded quantum-safe security possible for those sorts of devices, which is absolutely critical for the future of connected technologies. It's not just theoretical anymore. It's about enabling a truly secure Internet of Things in a post-quantum world.
Exactly. And just to round out the specs, the chip itself is quite robust performance-wise. It's capable of operating at a maximum frequency of 160 megahertz at a higher voltage of 1.1 V VDD, giving it significant headroom for even more demanding tasks if needed, albeit at higher power. But the fact that this is the first silicon-verified implementation of an LWR PQC core proven to work in actual hardware really solidifies the credibility and practicality of Saber as a leading candidate in the ongoing NIST standardization process. It's real, it works, and it works incredibly well across multiple critical performance metrics: speed, area, memory, power, and energy. It's a foundational step towards widespread practical quantum safe security. #outro.
Well, we've certainly journeyed today from the abstract, almost invisible threat of quantum computers breaking our current crypto to a concrete silicon-verified hardware solution with Saber, a leading post-quantum cryptographic candidate. We've seen how really ingenious hardware design, like that groundbreaking Schreiting Tomcook multiplication and the clever negacyclic memory management, has unlocked truly unprecedented speed and efficiency for this new era of cryptography.
That's right. The key takeaways here, I think, are clear. First, there's a critical and urgent need for post-quantum cryptography to secure our digital future against these emerging quantum adversaries. Second, Saber, with its robust mathematical foundation in the learning with rounding problem, offers a powerful and well-vetted answer to that need. And third, this dedicated hardware accelerator has achieved truly incredible, measurable performance gains, something like 80 times faster than software, 1.75 times smaller in area, even on an older process node, needing 4 times less memory, and consuming 1.38 times less power than other existing PQC cores. It's really a testament to human ingenuity, anticipating and solving these complex future challenges before they even fully materialize. This isn't just an academic achievement, it's a foundational brick in building the quantum-safe internet.
What stands out most to you from this deep dive? For me, it's that contrast between the sheer scale of the challenge that quantum computing poses this existential threat to digital security and then the elegance and sheer practicality of the engineering solution presented here. Making quantum-safe crypto not just theoretically possible, but actually accessible and efficient enough for everything from massive supercomputers down to the tiniest IoT devices. It feels like watching the future of security being engineered right now, in real time.
I agree completely. What's truly fascinating here and important to stress is that this is not just an academic exercise confined to university laboratories. This kind of work, building and verifying these hardware accelerators, is directly contributing to building a resilient digital infrastructure for a quantum-enabled future. It means secure communications, secure transactions, and confidential data for everyone, everywhere, even as technology continues to evolve at this astonishing pace. And it's not just about protecting tomorrow's data, but also ensuring that the digital records we create now, which could be captured and stored by adversaries today, remain secure decades into the future when quantum computers might be widespread. It's about building a digital legacy we can actually trust.
So what does this all mean for us, the listeners? As we move towards an increasingly connected world where practically every device talks to every other device, where data is generated and transmitted everywhere, constantly, the foundational security underneath it all needs to be robust, adaptable, and truly forward-looking. This deep dive into the Saber accelerator gives us a fantastic glimpse into the incredible foresight, the dedication, and the sheer engineering skill required to build that secure future.
And this deep dive into Saber makes me wonder, maybe as a final thought for you to consider, given the rapid advancements we're seeing in both quantum computing capabilities and these post-quantum solutions, what other seemingly impossible challenges might future engineers be quietly solving today, right now, ensuring the security and functionality of technologies we haven't even fully imagined yet? The relentless pursuit of better, faster, and more efficient security solutions, exemplified by this Saber accelerator, reminds us that the future of security isn't just something that happens to us. It's already being meticulously and ingeniously built by dedicated minds around the world.